Why does society fear intelligent people? It is a question that has echoed through centuries, whispered in the halls of power, in classrooms, in quiet conversations that are quickly silenced. From the moment a human being dares to think beyond the ordinary, to see further than comfort allows, they are marked as different. Socrates was condemned for asking people to question their beliefs. Galileo was locked away for daring to reveal the movement of the stars. Tesla, a man of visions decades ahead of his time, died forgotten and poor. Nietzsche's words, too radical for his era, were dismissed as madness. And yet, these are the very minds that shaped our world. Arthur Schopenhauer, one of philosophy's most piercing voices, argued that intelligence is both a gift and a curse. A gift because it allows us to see reality with clarity, a curse because such clarity separates us from the very society we belong to. Intelligence does not merely inform, it exposes. It strips away illusions, comforts, and falsehoods that most people cling to for stability. And when illusions are shattered, people grow fearful. Think of it this way. When you stand beside someone physically stronger, you may feel admiration, even inspiration. When you encounter someone wealthier, you may feel envy, but not rejection. But when you meet someone who sees more deeply than you, who challenges what you thought was certain, it is not admiration that rises first, it is unease. Because their presence is a mirror, reflecting back what we cannot see, or worse, what we refuse to see. And this reflection, this undeniable confrontation with truth, is what society fears the most. So we return to the question, why does society fear intelligent people? Perhaps it is not fear of intelligence itself, but fear of what intelligence reveals. Truths that are too uncomfortable, too disruptive, too impossible to ignore once seen. And in that tension lies the burden of the deep thinker, celebrated only in hindsight, yet misunderstood, resisted, and isolated in their own time. The curse of intelligence is not simply that others cannot understand you. It is that they often do not want to. The deeper you think, the more you notice patterns others overlook, illusions they still find comfort in, and truths they are not ready to face. And in that noticing, isolation grows. It begins subtly. You share a thought, a question, something that has weighed on your mind. And instead of curiosity, you are met with blank stares, polite nods, or a quick change of subject. You realize that most conversations are not built to explore truth, but to protect comfort. And when you break that unspoken rule, you are quietly set apart. Psychologists describe this as the mirror effect. When a deep thinker enters the room, they do not just bring new ideas, they hold up a mirror. A mirror that reflects the limitations, the blind spots, and the unexamined beliefs of those around them. Unlike strength or wealth, which exist outside the self, intelligence cuts into the core of identity. Because we define ourselves through what we believe, to encounter someone who challenges those beliefs feels less like a discussion and more like an attack. The mere presence of intelligence, even when silent, becomes uncomfortable. Schopenhauer recognized this centuries ago. He argued that intelligence is isolating precisely because it sees through the illusions most people depend upon. Small talk, social rituals, the endless pursuit of pleasure and status. For the deep thinker, these things appear shallow, repetitive, even meaningless. And once seen as illusions, they cannot be unseen. Imagine standing in a theater where everyone else is absorbed in the play, weeping and cheering at the drama on stage, while you can see the wires, the painted backdrops, the actors rehearsing lines they have memorized. You can no longer enjoy the show in the same way, but when you point it out, others do not thank you, they resent you. For you have broken the spell that gives their lives meaning. This is why Schopenhauer called intelligence a curse, not because it fails to bring truth, but because truth is rarely welcomed. Most people crave simplicity, comfort, certainty. They do not want their world disrupted by difficult questions. And yet the deep thinker cannot help but ask them. In this tension lies the fate of the intelligent individual, to walk a path between clarity and loneliness, between vision and exile. For the more clearly you see, the harder it becomes to belong. But why is it that intelligence, more than strength, beauty, or wealth, provokes such discomfort? The answer lies deep within human psychology. When we stand beside someone physically stronger, we do not feel our identity threatened. We might even admire their power. When we encounter someone wealthy, we may envy their possessions, but we still retain our sense of self. These forms of superiority exist outside of us, and so they do not tear at the fabric of who we are. Intelligence, however, strikes at something far more intimate. Unlike strength or wealth, our thoughts are the foundation of our identity. We are what we believe, what we know, what we understand of the world. And so when someone comes along who sees deeper, who questions the assumptions we take for granted, it feels personal. It feels as if the ground beneath us has shifted. This is not admiration, it is threat. Modern neuroscience confirms what Schopenhauer intuited long ago. Studies show that when people feel intellectually outmatched, their brains react as if they are in danger. The amygdala, the region responsible for fear and threat detection, lights up with activity. To the human mind, deep thought is not merely intimidating. It is processed as a survival threat. The body responds with the same alarm it would feel when facing physical danger. Why should this be? The answer lies in our evolutionary past. For most of human history, survival depended not on being the wisest or the most visionary, but on being accepted by the group. To stand apart was to be vulnerable. To be cast out was often a death sentence. Our brains, shaped over millennia, value belonging over truth. And so when a thinker enters the circle and unsettles the harmony with difficult questions, the group reacts instinctively. Not with curiosity, but with defense. Not with gratitude, but with suspicion. This is why deep thinkers are so often misunderstood. It is not that their words are too complex or their ideas too abstract. It is that their very presence disrupts the ancient balance of the tribe. Society sees not a fellow traveler, but a potential danger. The thinker does not intend to provoke fear, but fear is provoked all the same. And so intelligence, though silent, becomes a threat simply by existing. The strange paradox of intelligence is that the deeper you see, the less welcome you often become. One-on-one, people may find your insights refreshing, even inspiring. In private, a thoughtful conversation can feel like a rare gift. But in groups, the story changes. The more people are present, the more fragile status becomes. Suddenly, the thinker who asks difficult questions or introduces new ideas is no longer just sharing. They are threatening the delicate balance of reputation, hierarchy, and belonging. Psychologists have shown that when intelligence enters a group setting, the threat response rises dramatically. In a circle of friends, in a meeting, in a classroom, the deep thinker unintentionally draws a line of comparison. And when people feel outshined, their instinct is not to learn, but to defend. They may undermine, dismiss, or even ridicule the thinker, not out of reason, but out of a primal need to protect their standing. What was welcomed in private becomes disruptive in public. This reaction is amplified by the cognitive traps of the human mind. The Dunning-Kruger effect means those who know least are often the most confident, while those who know more carry doubt and humility. Status quo bias drives people to cling to what is familiar, even when it is false. And the backfire effect ensures that when confronted with truths that challenge their worldview, many double down instead of opening up. These biases are not signs of malice. They are signs of a mind protecting itself from discomfort. But for the deep thinker, they are walls that rise higher with every attempt to climb over them. And in our digital age, these walls have only grown stronger. Social media has created a global stage where certainty is rewarded and nuance is punished. Algorithms favor the bold, the emotional, the simplistic. The loudest voices spread the fastest, not the most thoughtful ones. Charisma, not depth, becomes the currency of influence. A single shallow slogan can travel further than a lifetime of careful reasoning. In this landscape, the deep thinker struggles, not because their ideas lack value, but because value itself has been redefined. This is the social penalty of intelligence. To think deeply is to risk being misunderstood. To question is to risk being excluded. And to insist on truth is to risk standing alone. For society does not simply ignore its thinkers, it often resists them, actively and instinctively, because their presence shakes the fragile illusions upon which social harmony depends. Arthur Schopenhauer believed that the tension between society and the thinker could be traced to a single idea he called the will. To him, the will was the blind, irrational force that drives all human life, the endless striving for pleasure, for comfort, for survival. Most people, He argued, live under what he called the will to live. They are guided by instinct and desire, chasing security, status, entertainment, and routine pleasures. This, for the majority, is enough. It creates meaning, or at least the illusion of meaning, and so life carries on. But the intelligent individual lives differently. For them, the will is transformed into something Schopenhauer called the will to truth. Instead of seeking comfort, they seek understanding. Instead of avoiding pain, they are willing to confront it if it leads them closer to reality. And this difference, though subtle at first, creates a chasm. Where others find joy in routine and distraction, the deep thinker feels restless. Where others take comfort in illusions, the thinker insists on peeling them back. This is why, Schopenhauer argued, intelligence feels less like a blessing and more like a burden. To see through the fabric of everyday life is to find yourself unable to fully participate in it. Small talk begins to feel hollow. Status games lose their thrill. The endless chase for money, fame, or pleasure feels like a shadow play on the wall, diverting, perhaps, but ultimately empty. The thinker begins to crave depth where society prefers simplicity, truth where society prefers comfort. Imagine being at a feast where everyone laughs and sings delighted by the abundance of food, while you are the only one who notices the cracks in the walls, the decay in the air, the fleeting nature of the celebration. To point it out is to ruin the moment. To remain silent is to bear the weight of knowledge alone. This, Schopenhauer believed, is the curse of intelligence. Not that it fails to reveal truth, but that truth often cannot be shared without costing you belonging. And so the philosopher concluded, with brutal honesty, that the more intelligent a person is, the harder it becomes for them to connect. Their awareness sets them apart. Their clarity isolates them. For while most live under the will to live, chasing what is pleasant, the deep thinker is condemned to follow the will to truth, even if it leads to loneliness. History does not whisper this truth, it shouts it. Time and again, society has rejected those who dared to think beyond its comfort. Consider Socrates, the father of Western philosophy. His only crime was asking people to examine their own lives, to question what they had always assumed to be true. For this, he was condemned to death. Offered a chance to escape, he refused. He chose to drink poison rather than abandon his principles, leaving us with his final warning: the unexamined life is not worth living. Centuries later, Galileo looked through a telescope and saw what few wanted to accept, that the Earth was not the center of the universe. His discovery shattered the illusions of the church, and so they branded him a heretic, forced him to recant, and silenced him until his death. Today, we celebrate him as a genius. In his time, he was treated as a threat. Nietzsche too was cast aside. His writings challenged morality, religion, and the very foundations of society. He told people that their values were built on comforting lies, that true strength came not from obedience, but from creating one's own path. The world was not ready. He was dismissed as insane, his words ignored, only to be rediscovered decades later as the seeds of modern philosophy. And then there was Tesla, the visionary who dreamed of free energy and limitless progress. His brilliance was undeniable, but his ideas threatened the empires of profit. Edison and Morgan ensured his visions were buried, and Tesla died alone, in poverty, while the world built fortunes on fragments of what he had created. Alan Turing, whose mind cracked the codes of war and helped save millions of lives, met a fate just as cruel. Instead of honor, he was persecuted for who he was, chemically castrated, and driven to his death at just 41. Only long after did society attempt to recognize him as the hero he was. Even Hypatia of Alexandria, a woman who taught reason in a world ruled by superstition, was murdered by a mob for daring to bring light into darkness. Her brilliance threatened those who held power, and so she was silenced. The pattern is undeniable. Society does not fear intelligence in hindsight, it fears it in the present. It resists it when it is most needed, and only later, when the threat has passed, does it offer praise. These thinkers were not rejected because they were wrong. They were rejected because they were right too soon. If intelligence reveals truth, why does society so often turn away from it? The answer is simple and yet unsettling. Human beings prefer comfort over reality. The brain, shaped by evolution, craves certainty and ease. Psychologists call this cognitive ease, the tendency to accept what is simple, familiar, and pleasant, while resisting what is complex, unfamiliar, or painful. A soothing illusion requires little effort. A difficult truth demands energy, courage, and change, and so the mind chooses the path of least resistance. This preference for comfort is reinforced by every institution that shapes us. Schools claim to value intelligence, but in practice they reward obedience. Students who memorize and repeat information succeed, while those who question too much are labeled disruptive. Workplaces claim to value innovation, but in reality they reward conformity. Employees who fit the culture, not those who challenge it. Even politics is built on this principle. Leaders who speak in bold, simple promises win over those who speak with nuance or complexity. Society applauds certainty, even when it is false, over truth that unsettles. And in our modern world, this pattern has only deepened. Social media has turned simplicity into a weapon. Platforms reward what is quick, emotional, and viral. A shallow slogan can circle the globe in minutes, while a thoughtful idea struggles to be heard at all. Outrage spreads faster than reason. Entertainment drowns out enlightenment. And in this storm of distraction, deep thinkers find themselves silenced not by force, as in the past, but by neglect. Their voices fade into the background, overtaken by the noise of comfort and certainty. This is why comfort wins over truth. Not because people are weak, but because they are wired to protect themselves from the discomfort of reality. To question deeply is to risk pain. To see clearly is to risk disillusionment. And most would rather hold on to their illusions than face the chaos of truth. The thinker knows this. Schopenhauer knew this. And yet the thinker cannot stop. For once you begin to see, you cannot choose to unsee. Schopenhauer did not simply diagnose the curse of intelligence. He offered a way to live with it. He knew that to think deeply is to walk a lonely path, but he also believed that loneliness could be transformed into strength. His first lesson was simple: embrace solitude. Do not see it as punishment, but as privilege. In solitude, the deep thinker finds freedom. Alone, they are no longer forced to dilute their thoughts, to disguise their insights, to play the endless games of status and small talk. Solitude becomes the soil in which ideas can grow. His second lesson: seek the like-minded. Even in a world that resists depth, there are others who crave it. They may not be near, but they exist, hidden in books, in philosophy, in art, in small circles of conversation where thought is not feared but welcomed. To the thinker, one genuine companion is worth more than 1,000 shallow acquaintances. For it is not the size of the audience that matters, but the depth of the connection. And third, share wisdom wisely. Schopenhauer warned against casting pearls before those unprepared to receive them. Not every crowd, not every moment, deserves your deepest truth. Instead, he urged thinkers to observe, to learn the rhythms of society, and to choose carefully when and how to speak. Sometimes silence preserves more than speech. Sometimes restraint protects both the thinker and the listener from unnecessary conflict. But perhaps the most practical guidance for the modern thinker comes not only from Schopenhauer, but from Einstein, who once said, "If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough." The challenge is not to abandon depth, but to translate it. To find ways of speaking that bridge the gap between complexity and clarity without betraying the truth. For if deep thinkers can learn to speak plainly without losing substance, they can build bridges instead of walls. The world may not always welcome depth, but it still needs it. And while isolation may come, it need not be despair. For solitude can sharpen the mind, rare friendships can nourish the soul, and wise words spoken at the right time can change the course of history. In the end, society does not truly fear intelligence itself. It fears what intelligence reveals. It fears the stripping away of illusions, the disruption of traditions, the uncomfortable mirror held up to its face. Deep thinkers are not cast out because they are wrong, but because they are right too soon. Their clarity unsettles, their honesty pierces, their vision exposes what most would rather leave unseen. Schopenhauer understood this paradox. He knew that the price of intelligence is isolation, but he also knew it is in that isolation that wisdom is forged. To see the world clearly is to stand apart from it, but it is also to hold a power few possess, the power to reveal truth, even when truth is resisted. So if you have ever felt alone in your thoughts, if you have been dismissed for your questions or silenced for your honesty, know this: you are not broken. You are not lost. You are walking a path that countless thinkers before you have walked. From Socrates to Galileo, from Nietzsche to Tesla, from Hypatia to Turing, the fate of the deep thinker has always been the same: resisted in their time, remembered after. Do not mistake rejection for failure. Do not mistake isolation for weakness. For history shows that it is the deep thinker who pushes humanity forward, even when humanity pushes them away. And so the question is not whether society will embrace you. The question is whether you will keep thinking, keep seeking, keep speaking, even when the world turns its back. Because the future does not belong to comfort, it belongs to truth. And it is only through those willing to bear the curse of intelligence that progress is ever made. If these words resonate with you, remember, you are not alone. Others walk this path with you, past and present. And though society may fear you now, it is thinkers like you who will light the way for tomorrow.